In the animal kingdom, a father and son discover a disease that makes people look like animals. As they search for the mother, they face strange and scary moments. Find out how their world turns upside down and what happens when people become animals. Watch our summary to see the surprising twists and turns in this wild adventure. Father and son were sitting in a car stuck in traffic and arguing. Suddenly, someone from the van in front broke their car door and hit it loudly. The people who were outside the car got scared and quickly got back in. It wasn't clear if the attacker was a person or an animal. The attacker had animal-like feet and a wing instead of a hand. The police caught the strange attacker. They later found out that a disease was making people look like animals. The government was trying to find a cure. Frank, who was in the car, had a wife who was also sick and in the hospital. Frank wanted to take care of her, but the doctor said she needed to stay in the hospital because she was getting worse. When he visited her, her face looked like an animal's. Frank told his son to visit her. The son said, "What's the point? She can't understand me now." Frank said she would be happy to see him and encouraged him to go. People at Frank's work told him about a new hospital nearby, made of strong concrete for people with animal-like features. That night, sick people were being moved to this new hospital, but the bus crashed into the water. Many people who looked like animals were killed or went missing. Frank's son, Emilio, saw someone who looked like an animal outside their house at night, but then thought it was just his imagination. When Frank heard about the crash, he went to find out about his wife. Police told him she was missing and not among the dead or the living. After the event, Emilio played tug-of-war with his school friends. He easily defeated the other team, showing he was very strong even though he didn't know how. His nail was also broken during the game. On his way home, friends stopped him and asked about a party on Friday. He didn't want to go but didn't explain why. When he got home, he noticed that his spine bone seemed to be sticking out. He was scared he might be turning into an animal, so he started taking a bath, but the dirt didn't come off. Meanwhile, Frank met the same police officer at a mall who had told him about his wife's disappearance. The officer said his wife was still missing and was not on the list of dead people. They were taking good care of those who were alive. Suddenly, someone shouted loudly in the mall. When everyone gathered, the man said he had seen a strange person. Everyone moved away, and Frank went to check. He hoped the strange person might be his wife. Instead, he saw a man who looked like an octopus trying to escape. The man threw things at the police officer, but she caught him. Frank also saw a little girl who had turned into a bird. After leaving the mall, the police officer asked Frank about the things he had bought. Frank said he needed them for camping, but in truth, he had bought them to find his wife. He thought she might be lost in the forest after the accident. He had hung their clothes in the forest, hoping she could find him by smelling them. The government had ordered that sick people could not stay at home. Frank wanted to care for his wife himself and needed all the supplies he had bought. However, Emilio had been invited to a party on Friday. Despite not wanting to, Frank allowed him to go, telling him to return before 8 o'clock. At the party, Emilio felt dizzy. A girl gave him a tablet, but instead of taking it, he licked it like a dog. Afterward, he went to the forest without fear. When he woke up in the forest the next morning, he felt something stuck in his throat. He went home quickly and noticed his lips and skin had changed. When his dad came to check on him, he shut the bathroom door and pulled out a feather from his throat. He realized he was turning into an animal. Frank and his son went to the forest with their dog to find his mom. Emilio called out for his mother. They didn't find anyone and got tired, so they went to sleep. In the middle of the night, their dog barked loudly and went to a tree where a monkey-shaped person was. As they went to check, an eagle-shaped person attacked Emilio. The eagle-shaped person saw that Emilio was also turning into an animal and realized he would not harm him. However, he still hurt Emilio. Frank took Emilio to the hospital, but his son didn't want to go because he was afraid people would find out he was turning into an animal. On their way, Frank and his son met a police officer who asked if something was wrong with his son. Frank said it was just a dog bite. The police officer insisted that his son needed to go to the hospital and accompanied them there. At the hospital, army doctors bandaged his son's wound. The police officer told Frank that the army had been called to handle the situation. After leaving the hospital, Frank and his son returned home. When they arrived, his son removed his bandage, opened his legs, and licked his wound. At school, his son yelled at the rats in the lab, which seemed to understand him. Later, His son went to the river, where he ate raw fish. A woman saw him, but he ran away before she could do anything. In the forest, he met the eagle-shaped man again, who was trying to fly, but kept falling. The boy gave him the raw fish and told him about a pond where he could practice flying. He said the pond was safe, and even if the man fell, he would land in the water and not get hurt. Back at Frank's restaurant, an animal-shaped man attacked Frank. Frank noticed another animal-shaped man who seemed to recognize the attacker and ran away, possibly Frank's wife. While Frank was thinking about this, the attacking animal screamed loudly. To prevent the customers from getting scared, the hotel owner told the animal to be quiet. Surprisingly, the animal obeyed. It had chains on its paws that prevented it from running away, and it walked over to the customers. Soon, the police arrived and captured the animal. Frank went with the officer to search for another large animal in the forest. They didn't find anyone, but did find his son's bicycle. When Frank returned home and went to wash his hands, he found some broken nails in the sink. These nails had been thrown there by his son. Frank realized his son was turning into an animal. At school, his son lost a tooth, and when the other kids laughed at him, he left and went to the eagle-shaped man, talked to the man, watched him practice flying, and treated his wounds. Frank later asked his son to show his hands. When his son refused, Frank confirmed that his son was turning into an animal. His son tried to run away, but Frank caught him. His son pleaded, "Please, Dad, let me go." Frank said, "I know what's happening to you. You're turning into an animal. When you become one, you'll still be my son. Just tell me what changes you're feeling so I can figure out what animal you're becoming." His son said he could hear things clearly from far away and asked about his strange nails. Frank asked if his friends knew, and his son said no. His son then asked if Frank would treat him like mom with chains. Frank was silent for a moment and then said, "Not now, but I don't know about the future." The next day, there was a party at Frank's restaurant. When his son arrived, his nails had grown very long. Frank scolded him, asking why he hadn't cut them. Upset by his father's scolding, his son attacked him and caused injuries. Frank, trying to protect his son from others, held scissors to his neck and threatened to cut the nails. After cutting his nails, Emilio met up with his friend. They became very close. While they were together, the girl touched his backbone and said, "I know what changes are happening to you, but I don't care." Meanwhile, one of their classmates discovered the truth about Emilio. A classmate came up with a strange device that made a sound annoying to animals but not to humans. He used the device to irritate Emilio and said, "I've known your secret for a long time." Emilio couldn't stand it and slapped the boy, leaving marks on his cheek. Because of all this, things got worse. The police and army were searching for him in the forest. The eagle-like man whom Emilio had helped before came to his aid. He flew Emilio to a different part of the forest. Police and army followed them there. Emilio crossed a river, but their vehicle couldn't drive through the water, so the army started shooting. The eagle-like man, who had become his friend, was killed in the attack. Emilio stayed in the forest, eating fruits and bathing in the river. When he came out, strange marks appeared on his back, showing that his body was changing quickly. As he wandered, he found a place in the forest where many people with animal-like features lived. There, he met his mother, who recognized him by his smell. She couldn't speak like a human, but kept sending her son to a cave as if telling him it was a safe place. Emil saw that some people had turned into snakes, some into monkeys, one into a pig, and a child had changed into a chameleon. Everyone lived peacefully until the military fired smoke into the area. As in chaos, the army used a special device that made noises which disturbed the animals. Emilio was affected and got caught by the military. The chameleon girl hid in a tree and escaped. The police brought Emilio to the city. Frank met them and said his son had gone to the forest at night for no reason. Since Emilio still looked human, police were not suspicious and gave him a paper to sign. When he couldn't sign it, he roared in anger, leading the police to suspect he was turning into an animal. As the police tried to catch him, Frank fought them, signed the paper, and took his son away. The officer who had been helping Frank noticed something was wrong and alerted the military, who started following them. Emilio asked his dad if he would visit him if he was caught and put in the health center. Frank assured him that wouldn't happen and promised to stay with him. Emilio told him he had seen his mom in the forest. Frank was happy to hear this. He quickly left his car in the forest and told his son to be free and happy there, and his son ran away. Frank cried tears of joy. relieved to have saved his son from government control. The story ends here.